What if I told you that there was a FIFA game released and you may have absolutely no idea that it even existed? A game that within the FIFA community always had a lot of questions of when will we ever see a return of not just the game, but features from within the game being added to the actual full release of FIFA 22-23. This is, of course, talking about the FIFA Manager series. Yes, there was indeed a FIFA Manager. Now, most of you may have completely forgotten, but now you just are remembering. Some of you may be younger and have absolutely no idea, because the last time that there was a FIFA Manager game was back in 2014, which is, of course, FIFA Manager 14. Cheapest and most reliable coins on the market. Go down to u7buy.com. Link is down below in description, and make sure to use code Vizeh at checkout for 5% off. FIFA Manager was a series which happened every single year going back to 1997. It was called FIFA Soccer Manager, then the FA Premier League Football Manager, then Total Club Manager, and then turned to FIFA Manager since 06 to 14. And 14 was the last feature, and this, of course, is a football management game, just like, obviously, Football Manager. Now, nowadays, in terms of a football management game, there's only one game that's really possible to really try to get that experience, and that is, of course, FM Football Manager. But back in the day, there was multiple different games out there that was fighting the same field to try and be the number one. Not only was there Football Manager, there was also FIFA Manager, and there was also the likes of LMA Manager, and also, don't forget, Championship Manager. I've played all four of these games. LMA Manager 06, 07 was absolute bangers for me. Championship Manager, I played on the original Xbox, like back in 05. If you're similar to my age and you're raised in the 2000s, or even if you're older, you have much more of a better idea that you will definitely remember the likes of LMA Manager. Absolute banging games. So today, let's talk specifically about FIFA Manager, have a bit of a throwback, and go into what features is in that game which you don't get nowadays, and what things are good or bad, and why it inevitably stopped. If you guys do enjoy, smash a like button and also subscribe if you're new, and let's go. So let's go break down to FIFA Manager. So this is, of course, a football management simulation game. So most things are expected. You get tactics, you'll get the team, and you'll get, you know, a board with budgets and transfers and stuff like that, and it's what you expect. What if I told you that on this game they had a family mode, a personal life mode, where you can go buy luxury items like cars, like making your own website, like houses and properties and yachts and mansions. Not only do you have a family, it's detailed. They can have relationships with each person in the family. You can also spend time with them, spend money on them, divorce your wife, have more kids, and each kid in the family has a dynamic to you individually. This is one feature that people always forget about FIFA Manager, is that they had its own family personal life mode, and it was so weird that you spend more time on this feature than you do actually managing a football club. In a way, it's similar to those mobile games or like jumpers for goalposts. With the personal life, you also got to invest in the stock market. That is a thing. You could also have hobbies such as mountaineering, doing a marathon, playing golf, or sailing. I mean, you don't actually do this task. You just kind of click a button and it's like, okay, you've gone golfing. Into more of the football side of things, you also had a create a club feature back in these days. You also had scenario modes, which you had a situation that would happen, such as you start a season under a transfer embargo, you can't make any signings, etc., etc. The fact that we create a club back in 2014 on here, I just don't get why it took them so long to do it onto actual FIFA. In terms of features, you had a finance assistant. Finance and the finances of football is a lot more detailed in this game. You had detailed expected income. You had tickets, sponsors, TV money, merchandise, membership fees. That is all part of how much budget you really have and how much the club is bringing in. Alongside bringing in, it was all brought down into the salaries, brought down to the transfers, brought down to infrastructure. It gave you a lot more of an insight of the finances within football, which, you know, let's compare it to what we get in career mode nowadays, is like nothing. One thing that I just realized when I was on here, back in FIFA Manager 14, guess what leagues they had? They had the conference. They had the Conference National and North and South. So they had it. I just realized this. So back in FIFA 14, in the actual game FIFA 14, they didn't have the conference. But in FIFA Manager, they have the conference. So do EA have the licenses or not? I'm so confused of why they are not licenses on the console game, but on Manager, they have it. I always feel like having a conference in career mode will make it so much more interesting for career mode RTG. Another feature is dynamic ratings. So in FIFA nowadays, you got the top left, you see your rating, right? Your job security. That's just an all-around, inconcluded, like, number of, like, how you're doing your job, right? It could be 82, 90, it could be 70, whatever else. But the lower it is, the more likely you're to get sacked, which is very, very vague because it's just one number and that's really it. On this game, on FIFA Manager, you had not only your job security, which is kind of like vaguely on top, but you also had sponsor ratings, you had fan ratings, you also had media ratings, and also the board ratings, not only for the finances but also for the sport, for how you perform in the actual competitions. So you had 5, 6 separate different ratings of how you are doing, including that also your ratings of your family as well. So it's like there's so much more going on here to try and balance the dynamics of. Also alongside that, you've also got dynamics with your players, which they've got to earn trust from you, or if not, the morale goes down. So there's 2 more dynamics there. So what I said just now just adds so much of a dynamic to the game of what to balance and what to do next than what we get nowadays, which is just kind of just you play games. It's a much more simplistic way that we got nowadays. In terms of when you start off the save, you can decide your contract length. It could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You decide. Alongside that, if you want from the beginning, you could also be a manager of a national team. You don't have to, but you can. You could also start off unemployed. You can start off doing a journeyman save. You start off unemployed. You give yourself the ratings of what you want. You want to start off at absolutely no rating, no reputation, and just go maybe get signed for a conference team. Any random ones, I'll sign you up. I believe that if you start off unemployed, you get 3 random teams wanting you to join for them. It could be a team in the 2nd tier or 3rd tier of German football, for example. Again, I feel like that'd be a cool thing just to have as an example. Do a journeyman save with FIFA. Start off just unemployed and see what teams will want you. Go for job interviews. I don't know why this isn't an option. It was back in these days. Also, I forgot to mention during recording, but there was such thing as stadium development. Stadium designing. Not just they click a button and it just does it, but you can actually creatively design the stadium the way you want to. This is a massive feature. Nowhere to be seen ever again. Nothing to do with facilities. Now, these are mainly the positives. Now, I could get into the negatives, and that is the fact that in terms of the kind of outside influence of the game, it looks like it's actually quite detailed. But when it comes to the actual tactics of the game, it's pretty simplistic, to say the least. Apparently, from what I found online, that really no matter what you do, it kind of doesn't seem to make that much of a difference in terms of the tactics. If you have a tactic on FM, you can see the tactic and you can see them getting more and more used to it, becoming more familiar with it, and adding chemistry to the team. With this game, it doesn't really feel like there's a real chemistry. And keep in mind, this is back in 2014, so what we have nowadays is unfair to compare to what they had back in 14. You know, you can only really compare FM 14 to what we have to FIFA Manager 14. But even back in those days, there was definitely more of a advantage to FM in terms of an actual football management game. There was more emphasis on the football and the tactics out of it than what it was on the outside influence of the public life and dynamics. Trying to get that perfect balance was always a problem with FIFA. I found this Reddit post that was put 8 years ago, right? And it was a guy asking what's the difference between FIFA Manager 14 and Football Manager. This was back 8 years ago, so this was during the time, right? And down below you'll see this explanation, which I think is pretty detailed. This lad who's deleted his account said FIFA Manager has many more backroom options. You have a personal life, can extend facilities, stadium, including designing it yourself, overseas shops, bank loans and investments, overseas youth centers, merchandising, all sorts. Which, of course, just saying that right now sounds amazing. That sounds absolutely perfect to what we would want in career mode now. However, he then says, the thing is, the football side of things is poor. Good enough and you'll always get the player, similar to what we get in career mode now. It's all about player level, which are numerical. The same frustrations exist on the tactics side. They seem to have no impact on the game really, and you could be a solid defensively 1 minute and lack 5 the next. Also, most importantly is this case. FIFA Manager 14 is the last installment, and it's exactly the same as 13, but with the newer database. Legacy version they call it. The exact same shit that they've been doing on the Nintendo Switch for the last 3-4 years. They've been doing this for years, this entire Legacy Edition, which is just the same game but with a new roster update. The people that made it have barely touched the game since 2011, and they won't be anymore. There's endless bugs that weren't and never will be fixed. The match engine is awful, buggy, and hideous. Okay, your strikers will score, but you will barely be able to watch the match. There's plenty more about it that sucks too, but and after years of staying loyal to it, I finally switched to Football Manager the last couple of years because FIFA Manager is so frustrating, bordering on unplayable. And there is what lied the death of FIFA Manager, was that they did the exact same thing that they've done in even nowadays, that they just kind of gave up with a project, but yet still made money from it for about 2-3 years until they inevitably stop, which I just find really annoying. Which what he's saying is true. It was pretty much the same game in essence since 2011. It can be subjective, and that maybe he thought that his tactics made no impact. Maybe some people may have a different opinion. From what I can see down below, it looks like the idea of building a new stadium, designing a new stadium, is really cool, and everything around facilities is really cool, but the actual football management side of it was always lacking in comparison to FM. And the crazy thing is, people nowadays are actually modding FIFA Manager 14 and putting it as if it's in, you know, Football Manager 22 or something, 21, and actually put it in a brand new roster, brand new teams, and updates of what EA will be doing anyway. You are still able to try and get mods that you can just have a real life, a current day version of FIFA Manager now. Issue is, let's look at the actual game engineer. People always say that FM, it doesn't have a good engine, but it's much better than this. At least FM, they kind of know their place and they keep their kind of cartoon-like style. With FIFA Manager, to be fair, back in the day, this was really good. This was really good back in the day. I mean, compare FM 14 gameplay to FIFA Manager gameplay, you would say probably FIFA Manager probably looks the better of the two. So maybe if they continued, it could be looking really cool. That's one thing that people don't like about FM, is the fact that they just don't like the graphics. For me, I really don't care about the graphics that much. To be fair, personally, I kind of like it more in 2D. Give me your thoughts down below in the comments. Did you guys forget about this FIFA management game? Because most of you may be quite young. You guys may not even know this was even a thing. It's been 8 years since the last one, so it would make sense. But there's just one thing that I can't wrap my head around. Maybe the actual management side of it wasn't that good. The actual tactics wasn't that good. I get that. But all these features, build your own stadium, stand by stand, design your own stadium, create a club, start unemployed, scenario mode, dynamics, facilities, detailed training, all of this isn't in career mode now. And I get that it's a completely different style of game. One's a management kind of spreadsheet similar kind of game. Another one's like career mode, I guess, on the console. But even still, I'm just looking at it thinking there must be some way. Like, they've got the ideas. Of course they do. Of course they know what facilities are. So, I just kind of look at this thinking, are they just not doing it on purpose? Just to not have people be that involved in career mode? Just to ensure that more people play FUT and have more chance of them putting in FIFA points? Am I dumb by saying that? I personally think they do this on purpose by not putting in these features that they can do, which they have done. They do it on purpose so that not too many people goes over to career mode and spends less time on FUT, therefore less likely to actually put money in the game. Tell me your thoughts down below in the comments. Hope you enjoyed this bit of a nostalgia trip, and I'll see you guys next time for another video, and stay safe, lads.